Welcome everyone to TAMA Talks. This is our third talk in the month of March, and we're really in for a treat today as TAMA member and artist Leslie Pierce leads our discussion of the life and work of artist Ellen Gallagher. I'm Janine Madden, the TAMA president, and this talk is going to be recorded and can be found on our YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that in the chat. I say it every time, and I forget to do it every time. So I promise I will get it in there today. So if you've missed our other talks and you want to, or if you want to share them, you can always find them there. And then they're also on our website under the TAMA Talks tab. So just as a reminder, feel free to keep your video on. If you would kindly keep yourself muted during the talk, as it really helps with background noise. But we do really encourage you to break in with questions. So as opposed to just leaving your audio on, it can be off, but go ahead and break in whenever you want. And like I was saying, there is that cool Zoom feature where you can just use your space bar to temporarily unmute yourself to contribute. You can also raise your hand in Zoom reactions function, and I'll see that. And then, or feel free to use the chat, which I will open as soon as Leslie starts sharing her screen.
Are you ready for me to share?
In just a second, yes, there will be some time at the end for question and answers. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to give you a little bit about our presenter today. So in addition to being a TAMA member and a TAM supporter, Leslie Pierce is a contemporary artist known for art that focuses on everyday people juxtaposed with coding systems, documentation, fragmentation, and technology. Her ongoing series, Code Defied, evolved from painting contrasted areas of flat and modeled forms of the human figure. She holds 2 art degrees, a BFA from, I'm assuming that is at the University of Texas, Austin,
Yes.
UT, and an associate's degree in video game art, which is really very cool too. So she has an expansive biography, but I'm going to go ahead and cut that and put it into the chat. So if you want to learn more about Leslie, you certainly can do so. And she is going to go ahead and begin our talk today about the artist Ellen Gallagher. So you can, yeah, perfect. You can just share your screen. That's awesome. I'm going to mute. Oh, I can't mute, but I can stop my video.
Hi, everybody. Today's feature is about the artist Ellen Gallagher. And I'm going to start by reading a short paragraph that I wrote for today. Later on, we'll be talking about Afrofuturism, what that is, and also Drexcia. Out of an Afrofuturistic sea, a place where Gallagherian shapeshifters narrate the submerged history of slavery, with tales from Moby Dick in the underwater land of Drexcia, using ebony and sepia magazine pages, minstrel cutouts, children's penmanship paper, and plasticine, comes artist Ellen Gallagher. Like her sea creatures, Ellen is a voyager in motion, moving fluidly through discovered, invented, and familiar lands. She is a contemporary multidisciplinary artist whose work spans across painting, drawing, collage, printmaking, sculpture, and film installation. This is one of her early images of minstrel drawings. We can already see objects swimming and the use of repetition and revision with humor to focus and destabilize racial stereotype signifiers. Born in Rhode Island to an Irish-American mother who raised her and an African-American father, she later attended Oberlin College and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. Was also a summer resident at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. Today, she lives and works in New York and Rotterdam, where she has studios in both. And this is a picture, a very early picture of her gluing down her signature penmanship paper to a canvas that she built. She has a carpentry background and also spent 1 term living on a fishing boat in Alaska studying water snails. Here we have O Susanna, an early work, 1993. On the left side, we see the cropped in version, and on the right side is the full 8 by 10 foot piece. It is oil, pencil, and paper on canvas. O Susanna is also an old minstrel song, which she uses in the title. There is a blonde lady you can see that repeats also in a sea of underwater eyes and lips that are also caricaturizing, minstrel eyes and lips. The blonde lady seems to activate the minstrel show. When we view the entire image on the right, it has the feeling of living in an underwater tapestry, but upon closer inspection, we see something entirely different, which is something so wonderful in the way she uses abstraction. Do we laugh or cry, or do we remain neutral? Always questioning. In the 1990s, she collected ebony, sepia, and Our World magazine ads from the 1930s to the 1970s and repurposed them. Racial stereotyping, humor, and the usage of plasticine are deployed in a very innovative way. The yellow hairstyles also have the feeling of cookie dough, referencing cookie cutter mentality of magazine ads. Also consumerism aimed at serial ideas on beauty and false history. The eyes are cut out and replaced with zombie-like alien almonds and maybe reference early Greek statues. Ellen developed character narratives, sometimes deploying people from real life. On the right, we have Pegleg, who is a real-life dancer, Pegleg Bates in vaudeville. He's also used to reference Captain Ahab in Moby Dick, which is a recurrent theme in her work. She's an avid reader and was heavily influenced by an early English teacher, who she gives credit to in one of the many videos where she speaks. A quote by Ellen is, "I do think you can change the past and the present somehow. Even if something has already happened, it doesn't mean it's settled." So here we have the blobby wigs, and you could just see her imagination of even on the hairstyles. So using razor edge humor to poke fun at consumerism. I reference back to Warhol and popism, but her work is so much deeper. It has a soul to it, whereas popism is just pure consumerism. Poking fun at that, her work has more meaning to it. One of the concepts Ellen has explored is the idea of how we read paintings as compared to magazines or a book. When we're reading books and magazines, we read it sequentially, and we could either remember the pages before or forget them. But when we read paintings, we read it in a different way. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, Excellento, which is at the Broad, and there's another piece coming up that you can also see at the Broad, which is very exciting. She opens up the pages, so we're reading it as spatial instead of sequential, which is very imaginative. And also her thought process of how we interpret information is very interesting. In this piece, Deluxe, she uses an incredible amount of varying mixed media in this. And she's using aquatint, dry point, photogravure, spit bite, which is also, it's an acid aquatint process, lithography, silkscreen, embossing, tattoo machine engraving, laser cutting, collage, crystals, cut paper, enamel, glitter, gold leaf, gouache, graphite, oil, and plasticine. This is also on view at the Broad. The resulting 60 objects exhibit aesthetic and narrative qualities that push the boundaries of identity and nostalgia.
Just a question. You said it's at the Broad. Is it in part of their collection, or is it in a specific exhibition right now?
I believe it was in an early exhibition, but they acquired this piece, so it's in their permanent collection. So I will double check on that for you, but it is, they do have it, they do own it. So here we have Ellen inserting herself into art history as Odalise. And this was, she repurposes an old photograph and which actually had Matisse over here, and she replaces Matisse with the head of Freud. And again, she's revising and inserting herself into art history. And now I'm going to let you ask questions. Well, at any time you have questions, please ask. But now I want to get into a little bit about what Afrofuturism is. So I found it so fascinating. And also I'll talk a little bit about the Middle Passage, which I'm going to fess up, I didn't know about. I did not learn in school when I was growing up about the slavery and the ships that were, and it was called the Middle Passage. So I'm going to take an excerpt here, read it to you from Architectural Digest, which I also found fascinating, the source. Afrofuturism is a fluid ideology shaped by generations of artists, musicians, scholars, and activists whose aims is to reconstruct Blackness and culture, reflected in the life and works of such figures as Octavia Butler, Sojourner Truth, Sun Ra, and Janelle Monáe. Afrofuturism is a cultural blueprint to guide society. The term was coined by Mark Dury and has to do with minds of enslaved Africans who prayed for their lives and the lives of their descendants along the horrific Middle Passage. The first Afrofuturists envisioned a society free from bondage of oppression, both physical and social, and reimagines a future void of white supremacy thoughts and the structures that violently oppress Black communities. This is way before Black Lives Matter. Gallagher is also heavily influenced by a Detroit house band called Drexcia that sees themselves as channeling oral hallucinations from the Middle Passage. They imagine this Black Atlantis made up of women and children who were thrown overboard during the Middle Passage. And it's this kind of militarized zone of this underwater sea world. So blending of sci-fi, music, literature. Since 2011, Ellen has worked on an ongoing series of mixed media drawings and collage entitled Watery Ecstatic. These works are related to Drexcia's imagined underworld world inhabited by the descendants of pregnant women thrown off the slave ships during the Middle Passage crossing to America. And she talks about her thought process in abstracting that when you abstract something horrific, it gives it a different meaning. But then when you look at it on close observation, it becomes a specific narrative. So there's a lot of narrative in her work, and also the use of underlying grids. In terms of art history, I believe she has a lot of elements, and I want to ask Max on this, on being a post-minimalist, but maybe stretching way beyond that.
Max, maybe can you just give us a little bit of a refresher about what post-minimalism is?
No idea.
Okay, thank you.
That's you know, everything. It's if you ask, in my thinking, it's a bit like saying postmodernism, where it becomes a word that doesn't have any meaning after a while. Because if you say it's post-minimalist, do you mean it is after minimalism, which everything is, or is it something that engages with minimalism but goes beyond it in some ways? In which case, I don't see how these could be classed as related to minimalism at all. So I think it's a problem with the vocabulary because essentially, like postmodernism, it's a meaningless term. If there's so many different variants on what people believe it means, then it's meaningless.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Ouch. All right, so I'm reading, thank you for the clarification. I'm reading on things that other researchers are talking about. And I did look at the work of Eva Hess and other people that they are classifying as post-minimalists. And I do see her way beyond that and something entirely different than anyone's done. So whether you can actually classify an artist in any group, it can be questioned. So here we have more on Watery Ecstatic, and she cuts into the paper. The idea of cutting into the paper and the way she does it also makes me think of how wounds heal, and sometimes deep wounds don't heal and need to be examined. So here we have on the left, we can see definitely abstraction of the eyes, mouth, and nose. And if you look carefully on Dewbreaker on the right, we have reference to octopus tentacles that could also be signifiers for slave chains and the idea of underwater lands.
Are you going to talk a little bit about the background on both of these, or is that coming up?
Actually, right now it is.
Okay, sorry.
Here's a quote right from Ellen. There's this push and pull between the watery blue of the penmanship paper lines and the gestural marks made inside and around them. Penmanship paper is the found material that I always see as a reference to how you make your letters, what height and where you do whatever, but it's always been a sign of gesture for me. So here, the background is glued down penmanship paper, and she's got oil acrylic ink and paper on canvas. So she glues that. It's almost like a skin that she's working on top of. Also the colors, her color palette goes with the underwater and watery. This is an installation that I don't have a caption for. I gathered a lot of information. I apologize that I don't know where I sourced this from. You could see where she's also working with sculpture. It looks like tires and she has a big concern with ecology. She's moving into a bigger concern with that. So again, she moves between different media, which I absolutely find fascinating. She's definitely an artist that's not embarrassed to show her brain power, which is something I really respect. Here is an installation. It's showing one of her earlier films with Bessie Smith, who was an American blues singer widely renowned during the Jazz Age. She died in a car wreck, and the story goes that they wouldn't help her in a white hospital. So because she wasn't rendered age, she passed away. And we're gonna actually hear right from Ellen as we take a look at this short video from R21.
You know, do you remember those viewfinders from the 70s? I was really into that, and I had viewfinders, and I had a projector. I was allowed to bring boys up to my room if I was going to show them these projections I had, and so that was really exciting. I did really like showing these projections in the dark and telling stories. There was a sort of stories that were supposed to go with them, but I would change the order and make up other stories. That was a very sort of calm moment for me, these stories I would make up. The Red Baron was a favorite one. And then mixed with, you know, if you can imagine, this story about Bessie Smith and her car accident, and that she wasn't able to get to the hospital, or she was able to get to the hospital and they wouldn't take care of her. So these slides would all get jumbled together and would end up being part of my slideshow and my narration. And you know, people were really quiet. I mean, usually I was really territorial and really fighting with the boys in my neighborhood a lot, and they were very, at least momentarily, obedient and quiet and listening. So.
And she also talked about projecting a grid in space. That was a clip from Art 21. I had wished that there was a longer version on YouTube, and I couldn't implant the long version, but I will have all of those, the links listed for you at the end. What she talked about further on in the video was she's projecting a grid in space, but it's also in the same place, so it's repeating over and over. So I jumped to Einstein's theory of relativity and just how time and space move. Here we're moving into, this is very interesting, Oxidex, which actually is a bloodworm, and we'll be watching a little video from her talking about that. And here's an excerpt from Freeze magazine. This was made in collaboration with Dutch artist who she lives with in Rotterdam, Edgar Klein, and I may be mispronouncing it, which I probably am. It's spelled Cleijne. The work features 16 millimeter film and painted glass slides projected inside a large black box. Colorful mix of marbled ink abstractions, the slides dissolve into one another to create a hypnotic sense of morphogenesis. So things are morphing into one another. But rather than hear me talk about it, I think it's much more interesting to hear right from the artist. I do want to also add that both Oxidex and Murmur, they were made between 2003 and 2004, another collaborative installation. The way they're animating cut paper, so collage into art, into film. And they reference back to a German artist I have never heard of, that nothing has been seen like this since German computer artist Manfred Mohr's luminously tangible cubic limit, which I am going to look up. So here it is, much clearer from the artist's mouth.
It seems like animation has always been implied in my work and has always been moving towards that. In the painting, the way that the form is abstracted is like early animation. I break them down into moving parts. Oxidex is a bone-devouring worm that was recently discovered off of the coast of Monterey. What they thought they came upon was a cliff jutting out from an ocean canyon. They, took off a chunk of it and brought it back into the lab. And they saw that it actually was a whale bone, and that there were all these plumy forms coming out of it. And as they looked at these plumy forms, they saw they were a new worm that hadn't been categorized yet. I was really attracted to the way the scientists described finding the form. It was such like a literary device. You think you're seeing one thing, and then it turns out to be something completely different. This idea of evolution and evolutionary possibilities quite often repeats in science fiction. For me, the protocols of science fiction and the protocols of science are not separate. They're woven together. Whale fall happens as whales descend through the depths of the ocean at their death. And it carries with it so much knowledge. So all those like secret passages you hear about between the Atlantic and the Pacific, all of these routes then become lost. So I thought that the Oxidex worm inscribes these systems of travel into the bone. And it's a paper box inscribed on both sides to signify this kind of carving. Edgar Klein and I wanted to create these passageways in the film. For instance, we turned a blob of ink into a 3D model. And so this paper bird swims through this, literally through what's a blob of ink is now a tunnel. Matter is not fixed and is always in motion. You're dealing with this idea of ecology, transformation, and evolution into something different.
And here I have screenshotted an installation view, compliments of Hauser and Wirth. And something I find fascinating is different ways that artists present their work in installations. So that was something I wanted to add, along with shots of her in her studio. So here you can see the size. This gives a size of what she's working on here, and also the Oxidex right there you can see. So, and I love looking at artist supplies, also all the different carts and things, and how much you can imagine why she needs so much space, because she's using so many materials to create her wonderful work. Here are some links. I'm also going to throw them into the chat on segments you could watch about her. And now I'd like to open it up and hear from you on what you think about her work. Correct me if I'm putting her work in art history improperly, and just anything you want to talk about her work.
I'm curious about her use of plastiline, because it's not a permanent, I don't think it's archival.
She talks about that her and the use of magazine pages. It's not archival, and she likes the idea of things yellowing and changing in time. So that's correct. That and I have never looked up plasticine or Play-Doh to see its archival properties, but that in itself, I should have actually, but you're right on that too.
Yeah, it's curious because a lot of those pieces are wall mounted, and plastiline is used, I think, for casting, also just for studies. A lot of like anatomy studies are done with it, and it's sort of a throwaway medium. And over time, I think it might just sort of like fall off the surface. I don't know. It's just, it was interesting to see it mounted on the wall.
That would be, I remember when I was at UT Austin and we were looking at an Ansel Keeper piece, and they were talking about what a nightmare it was for conservators.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I honestly don't know about that, but I did watch a video where she does talk about how she likes the idea of things yellowing and changing in time.
Yeah.
And the use of her using playful, kids, I think of Play-Doh. I played with silly putty and Play-Doh, as a child, and everybody used penmanship paper. That's just such a unique way to think of creating a grid.
Mm-hmm.
We use plasticine in England rather than Play-Doh. So when we were kids, plasticine was the common stuff. Play-Doh wasn't around.
Was it yellow?
Yeah, it seems like
Or all colors, right?
All colors.
it seems like it might have a more oily content, like the consistency of silly putty, which seems to be more oily, and maybe whatever the ingredients is in it. Can you go back to that
Oh, so
slide that shows all the different hair covered? Yes. So it's interesting to me that she chose to highlight, most specifically, even just with that traditional sort of yellow, all the different hairstyles of the models that are used in the picture. And I know from working with Candy that there is some significance to um, the afro and how it relates to women at this time and even now. And so it's interesting that that number one that you picked that piece, but also that she chose to make the modifications to both the eyes and the hair on these models.
and they're all different. It's like I personally would love to go to a beauty parlor that would do that to hair. That would definitely dealing with race and identity, and dark humor. I'm not sure, like sometimes I think it's dark humor and sometimes it's shining a light on racial prejudice. And it feels also, I mean, she's a contemporary artist, but this has been going on forever. I see her also, there was also something at the Blanton Museum in UT. I remember seeing it, Kara Walker was exhibited there. And Michael Ray Charles was one of the painting teachers. And so they also use humor to deflect a painful past of slavery. And each does it in a completely different way.
Candy makes a note in the chat that it looks like a depiction of wigs versus natural hair. Is it wigs?
I think she calls them blobby wigs. So yeah, wigs.
Even on that second piece, it's just an enormous, the size of it is just, I don't know, 96 by 192 inches.
Can't do that in a studio apartment. Sorry. Okay. And here,
And so go ahead.
I was going to say that she moves from it being this opened up magazine look to being individually framed, different installs. So they're, whereas this, it's spatially, she talked about the spatial difference. And here they're self-contained within each other, but read together also. I think it's fascinating on this one. We talked about it yesterday, Janine, that the amount of different media she's using in this, she definitely likes pushing boundaries of media too.
Yeah, the tattoo machine engraving. I found that very interesting.
there's a piece I didn't include. She did an Isaac Hayes piece that's, I think it may be within this. On some of the installs, she has that included. Oh, here it is. There's Isaac Hayes. And if you watch the Art 21 videos full length that wasn't on YouTube to embed, she talks about that, and it shows her process a little bit on how she did that.
And did you talk about, I'm so sorry because I was watching the chat and the people coming in, but did you explain this whole piece of who the man is? And did you say that and I missed it?
I did, that it was Matisse and now it's Freud and she's the Odalise.
Okay.
I may have gone through pretty quickly. This was just an extra one that I had if time permitted. This is newer, it's 2019 and it's so shimmery, it kind of has a Klimt feeling to me, and you can see an alien in the bottom middle here. It's an underwater space alien there, and her work with something else that I find interesting in any artist's work is that you could look at it and learn something more each time you look at it. Like, oh, I didn't get that about that. I didn't see that. Like, there's different ways to look at the same piece. And very inventive artist.
Yeah, we really appreciate you kind of shining a light on her work. And I think that's another, we were chatting about it earlier, but that's another reason why we like to do these TAMA talks is that number one, it's just really nice to be able to explore the work of artists that we might be unfamiliar with and learn a little bit more about them and their lives and how their life impacts what they do and the art that they create.
And honestly, her work, she's so prolific. I could have just had like hundreds of more slides to show you because her work ethic is amazing, and she's an avid reader. And like I mentioned to you before, Janine, it's like, where is she getting all this time? Her work is so intricate, and she does collaborations with other people, master printers. And, but I just, she's an artist I really admire. And I was saying before that if I had top 3 artists that I would like to meet in person, she's definitely one of them.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I personally really appreciate the amount of time, and I recognize it does take some time to prepare these decks and do the research. And then I also appreciate the fact that you offered to present your work to the group. We appreciate it too. So
Anybody else want to talk about, ask questions or their thoughts on the art?
Leslie, I had sent you a little chat to ask you, did the artist Ellen expound on what she was trying to convey in the minstrel paintings? Because it's mostly eyes and lips. I understand why she might have chose those 2 features, but did you find anything in your research why she did it?
She was, it was her abstraction. So they're almost like, I believe, disembodied figures. And because they're offensive and has to do with the racial stereotyping for vaudeville acts, that she was activating that as a symbol.
Oh, sorry.
And let's go back.
That's so strange. Hold on one sec.
So she was kind of breaking free from that, and by shining a light and showing the ridiculousness as well as the harshness and the absurdity. I think I see it as an irony, and also I'd like to hear what you think of it when you are looking at it. She's not doing it in, she's in your face, but not in your face at the same time, I think, about injustice and looking at the past.
That's in your face to me. So for people who don't know, you know, the eyes, the lips, the black face, most people would say that's offensive, but people didn't find it that way. So that's subtle for people who don't know, but for people, to me, it seems like who do know, it's in your face.
I do want to clarify that on the left, this is really cropped in. And so if you were across a room, I wouldn't like, if I'm, well, we're looking at a screen also, but this is 10 by 8 foot. If I was in another room looking at the full piece on the right, I wouldn't be sure what I was looking at.
I can't tell either, but I'm just saying.
And then you go up to it and then you're shocked and it's like a 1-2 punch, like, oh my God, is that what it really is? And then you're offended and then you're like, why? And then again, it's like, do you want to, and then it's silly at the same time. So like, do you want to laugh, cry, or remain neutral? Which, and I pose that question, it's, which is very current, is, you know, just the absurdity of racial prejudice and the white supremacy going on today, that the research, you know, I'm going to just be honest, I didn't realize how horribly bad it was still. And then over the last 4 years, of course, all of that was really exposed. So she's exposing it, but you know, you can't escape the pain, even when it's presented with humor, I think. And I hope, you know, that would be something that would be so nice to, you know, ask more of her than me interpreting it or anybody interpreting it and reading about it. But I hope that was somewhat helpful.
A quick question. This isn't relevant to the artist. This is actually to do with your sourcing. That is impossible to be 10 by 8 feet. That's impossible. I mean, 10 by 8 would just be somewhat off of a square. Could you check, can you tell us, because that's nearly twice the height that is wide.
Oh, true.
And I'm just wondering how big it is, because it gives me an idea of the physical impact on it, because 10 feet is a big painting. You know, that would be.
Do you know how to transfer? I am not a mathematician. Do you know anything about centimeters? I used to have, I used to have an app on my phone that transferred centimeters. So I'm just wondering if the 10 by 8 foot is wrong, but in centimeters. Is anybody good at centimeters?
Oh,
That's interesting.
Sorry.
So on the
Sorry.
on the MoMA site where it says that it's not on view, but I have a feeling that may be from where you got it, because it does show the medium as you listed, and then it shows the dimensions as 10 by 8. So
that's physically impossible. I mean, if we look at
that, it's much longer. I agree.
Yeah. So the
art detective work on that and get back to you on the actual size.
You know, even if it's just 10 feet tall and it's only 5-6 feet wide,
that makes more sense.
It's going to be a physically impressive painting. I mean, especially like you're saying about being at the other side of a room, it's going to be monumental. It's going to look completely abstract from a distance. It's going to look non-specific until you get up close and realize that it is specifically lots of eyes, lots of lips, and the weird little blonde woman.
So this notation that I found is that it's part of the collection of Michael and Joan Salke in Naples, Florida, and they listed as 60 by 36
feet?
inches.
Oh. Okay.
So they have 152.4 by 91.4 centimeters.
That's only 5 feet.
Wow.
So
Wow,
again,
so my source was MoMA and MoMA was wrong. Okay.
if
Yes.
that's, I'm just checking
Okay,
really
well, I
quickly.
apologize for that, and we'll fix that.
It's not 50. That's not right either, though. That can't be 60 by 36, because that would make it. The dimensions on that would be 5 to 3 feet, which would mean that the width would have to have been 3/5.
Now I really want to see it in person.
Right, exactly.
With my
exactly.
yardstick. Like, how big is this?
I didn't mean to be so pedantic about it, although I was just like, that's not right. Hold on.
No, that's a good grab on that, because, you know, yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I should have noticed that, honestly, because I used to do a lot of photography and print 8x10s. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm searching feverishly to find a better,
Isn't that interesting?
more
Even
realistic measurement.
really have to like cross-reference a good example of even the museums can make a mistake. They're not infallible.
And you know, you make a very valid point too, which is that when we're doing the research for these, there is some of that. You know, these are not. No one's getting a degree after watching these talks, and so you know, we are pulling things with as much notation as possible from the internet. And like we were chatting yesterday, I think one of the key pieces is that really we're just trying to whet the appetite of the viewer to say these are artists in whom I didn't know previously and I want to learn more about them. And I think you have done an excellent job of doing that with us today, because like you were saying, she's a favorite artist of yours, and that's how we started TAMA Talks. The board picked an artist, and we went from there, and we're going to continue on that path as we move through April. So I am going to share my screen. Let's hope this works. I had to pop out of that for a minute. So this, oh, I don't have my, hold on, let me see if I can open up my chat window again. So this video is in German on her, it's in German with English subtitles, and I've somehow made it play while she was talking earlier, so you might have heard some German man speaking in the background. But it was a very, yeah, it was a very interesting, very, very interesting video of this gentleman's understanding and explanation of her work. I really found it to be very helpful. So I really want to thank you, Leslie. It takes a lot of courage to go out there and do all this work and then present it to the group and take our questions. So I really
thank you for inviting me to do this. I'm an introvert who's been by themselves for a year, so I'm glad I didn't faint or anything in the middle of it. So.
You're fine. You're
fine. And I love talking about art. So, and I love hearing about art. I love talking to other artists I respect, and you know, I live and breathe it too. So glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the next TAMA talk that we're going to be doing is next Friday, March 26th. And we are going to be discussing the San Francisco Bay figurative and mid-century artists of that region. And Samuel, who's there, is going to be joined by Ann Weber, who is Ann still a docent at the TAM? I don't know if she's still a docent there, but I remember meeting her when we lived there. Very, very sweet, and we've been in communication. So she and Sam are going to offer their take on the artists that we are going to be talking about. There should be I'll put a evite out on that tonight. I'll try and let the one that we've just gone through finish and then send another link out. It is up on Facebook as an event. And so on April 2nd, Jason Jen from the TAM will join us to give us a perspective on how the art scene has been affected by COVID, and then some really good news, we hope, about the shows coming up at TAM that may be opening sooner than we think. So that's good news. Our fingers will be crossed on that. And then on April 9th, which will be our last TAMA talk for a while, particularly if the museum is going to open, Max is going to lead a discussion on the work of Fiona Ray. So I have an evite all ready for that to go out as well. So we'd love for you to join us and encourage folks to join us. We really have a fun time bringing this to you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you, Leslie. It was great.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks
Thank you,
everyone for tuning in.
This is very enjoyable. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We will see you all next week.